Hi everyone, this is Kavita, Certified Empowerment Coach and Hypnotherapist, and you are listening to the Enlightened Heart podcast, where we explore topics that empower HSPs and empaths to go from surviving to thriving in the world. I use my years of coaching, my personal experience, and my training to provide deep insights and implementable strategies to help you thrive. Hello, everyone. Today, I am so excited to be interviewing Stephanie Papadakis, who's a holistic nutrition consultant, AIP coach, and grief recovery specialist. She helps clients step into their power, their bodies, and their work and their lives by taking control of their nutritional, mental, and emotional health so they can become who they were always meant to be. And she does this by addressing health imbalances caused by autoimmune diseases, hormonal issues, poor digestive health, stress, and grief by shifting mindsets using mindfulness techniques and healing emotional wounds by learning to trust intuition. She is the resident holistic nutritionist for both Them's Health and Some of Us, and has been featured over 15 times as a holistic nutrition expert in Bustle. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to interview you today. What a bio. I'm so excited to dive in. So just wanted to start by asking you if you consider yourself an empath or highly sensitive person. And if so, tell us more about that. How did you find out you were?
Oh my gosh, yes. And yes. I'm definitely both an HSP and an empath. I think as an empath, I knew I probably knew my whole life, but it didn't really occur to me until sometime in my late 20s where, I just felt things so deeply and always kind of just knew that I would take on whoever was around me, their feelings. And I think with the HSP, it was really sometime maybe 5 or 6 years ago in therapy, actually, my therapist, she said, have you ever heard of the term highly sensitive person? And I said, no, but that sounds like it fits. And so she talked to me a little bit more about it. And she said, go and just do a ton of research. And I did. And everything really fit. Everything kind of made sense after that. It made sense why I had so much trouble in the corporate world and, why I was feeling things so strongly when I was at work. And I think my life after that, like I said, it just made sense.
Yes, amazing, isn't it? When you find out more of who you are and how you're made, how that just makes sense. So I heard in there, you're corporate and some other things going on. So can you tell me more about your story? We'd love to hear about your journey.
Yeah. So it definitely, there's different little pieces in there. So I think, in terms of where I'm at today, it had a lot to do with when my dad died. He died suddenly in 2009. And before that, I had experienced people dying. My grandfather died when I was 12. My godfather died when I was 17. But nothing really. That was really impactful, and it changed my entire life. And I did nothing for 5 months. I didn't eat. I barely slept. It was hard to work. I lost 22 pounds. It was really intense. And it wasn't until I moved out on my, in my own place and realized I had to take care of myself that I noticed that, what I put in my body and the kind of movement that I was doing would actually help me feel better. And noticing that, it kind of made me change my outlook on, what I was eating constantly and how I was feeling that way. And knowing that it would make me feel better if I ate more healthful, more nutrient-dense foods as opposed to, more processed foods. And I'd always had digestive issues growing up. And it wasn't until, this is where the corporate part comes in, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was having a lot of problems in my corporate job, and I was having awful digestion. And I was in the bathroom for like 2 hours out of the day, and I would get called into the office. They would ask me where I was, and it was really hard to explain. But the job was demanding, and it was also abusive. So, that just exacerbated everything. And then compounded with that, my mom came down with an autoimmune disease. That scared me because I didn't want to lose her. And I had been doing all this other research on my own that, kind of led me to, interestingly enough, learning about how you can, help heal autoimmune disease with diet and lifestyle. And so I did lots and lots of research for my mom. I sent her tons of books, and together she reversed her autoimmune disease fully within 6 months of being diagnosed. And that was kind of the aha moment for me, where I was like, maybe I should be doing something in nutrition and helping people who have, gone through grief or have unprocessed grief, who have autoimmune diseases and digestive issues. And so I made the call to go back to school in 2016 to get my certificate. And that during that time was also, I was also diagnosed with SIBO. And that was actually really helpful because I knew something was wrong with my digestion, but just having that diagnosis and knowing that I'm not crazy after going to so many doctors, that was another thing, was I had been going to doctors for the past 7 years, telling them like something is going on. I don't know what's wrong. This isn't normal. And they say, oh, you just have IBS. That's what happens with IBS. But nope, lo and behold, actually most IBS is caused by SIBO. So about 70% of cases are SIBO, and SIBO is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So, it's sometimes when you're able to get that diagnosis, when you're able to find the doctor who really listens to you and hears you and gives you all of your options, it's so rewarding. And it almost feels better just because you now have that support rather than, being told that nothing is wrong with you and feeling like crap afterwards.
Yes. I'm sure so many listeners resonate with what you've shared. Some pieces that really stand out to me is that you experience profound grief, and you were in a workplace where you were also experiencing abuse, right? And so the sense of that dread, when people talk about that, I feel it in my gut, right? And that feels so much of what you're sharing. And so you actually had physical manifestations, which a lot of people do. They just don't make that connection.
Right.
And then on top of it, 7 years of hearing you have IBS, right? And you had an internal knowing that, yeah, okay, but what is happening here? Why do I have IBS? What is, and like you said, IBS is mainly caused by SIBO, is how you pronounce it, correct?
Yes.
And so, if you can address that, then you don't have to suffer. You don't have to experience that. I know for me, it was fibromyalgia that they wanted to diagnose me with. And I sat in the office and I said to them, don't put that on my chart because I'm a business owner. My husband's a business owner, and we have to buy our own health insurance.
Oh.
And I didn't want that diagnosis on my chart. Right. Because I knew that would be a nightmare, right? And I said, are you sure? And they said no. So yeah, so this idea that, autoimmune, that our bodies and mind are connected, right? It's like, whoa, what is that? Really? It's all connected. So, and then the other piece that really stands out is that you obviously were not feeling like you belonged at your workplace, in your corporate job. And you were receiving signs and signals and probably intuitive hits that you shouldn't be there, that you don't belong there. Mm-hmm. And probably continued to be there, as most of us ignore those signs and signals. And then, eventually figured out where you're meant to be and where you're meant to serve through your mother and that, right? And so that kind of, and that stands out to me also because so many people come and ask, well, what is my purpose? Right? And they're forcing it. They're forcing it. And if you're really paying attention and looking at where you're drawn and what you're interested in and where, what is it that are the challenges you're facing in your life, and that can be uncovered. So thank you for sharing all of that. So tell me more about now how you helped. So you decided to make the step into nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
You realized what a big impact, it made for your mother, and you still were suffering. So I'd love to hear more about how you worked on yourself and found the doctor that really paid attention to you, and, more about that part of the journey. Now you're looking into nutrition and you figured out what's up with you, what's going on with your body.
Yeah. So, I think it wasn't really until I found this doctor, and I had been going to traditional, Western doctors trying to figure it out. And as I was in school and learning about SIBO, that was when I kind of got that intuitive hit where I was like, oh, I think this is what this might be. So I went to a GI specialist and said, look, I actually brought all of the supplements that I was taking and herbs. And I said, I'm taking all of these things and nothing is helping.
Mm-hmm.
SIBO, can I get a test? And she said, I don't think it's SIBO. I can give you an antispasmodic to help with the bowel movements. And I was like, this still doesn't feel right. Like, I don't want to take an antispasmodic. I want to figure out what's going on. And so it actually wasn't until another year later that I went to an integrative doctor at Sutter through their Institute of Health and Healing, which I have to say I have had really good experiences at the Institute of Health and Healing with multiple of their clinics, because they have them in San Francisco. They have they're closing the one in Marin. They have one in Santa Rosa and one in Roseville out past Sacramento. And so the doctor that I found, Dr. Griffin, she was at the Marin, she was in Marin at the time. And she sat with me for an hour and asked me tons of questions, like drilled deep into my whole health history. And it felt so much more aligned. And, at the end of it, she said, let's get you a SIBO test. She's like, I think it's probably SIBO. Let's get it. And you'll know for sure. And then we can move forward with whatever option you want. So if you want to take antibiotics, you can. If you want to do herbs, you can. But you can make that call. And so I went and did the test. It's a 3-hour test. You have to blow into a bag every 15 minutes after you take this sugar solution, and you can't eat for 12 hours before that. But, when I had that, came back positive, and I went back and, had another appointment with her, and we had a plan of action, and that was really reassuring. And so I think that experience, I had already finished my schooling at that point, and I had quit my job to do this full time. And that was, really influential too to my business and the way that I run the work that I do, because it's so important to look at the history, like the whole health history of a person, and even their community and how they grew up, with whom they grew up, and then having a plan of action after that to be able to work towards. And being held accountable was also really helpful for me, knowing that I had check-ins with her every few weeks, which is also a crucial part of my business now. So it was just something that it impacted me so profoundly at a deeper level. And she was the one that really taught me about the mind-gut connection, and told me, that it's not just all these supplements, it's not just your diet that's going to help you. You really have to take into account that you need to do stress reduction techniques. You need to focus on really taking care of yourself in a different way, so that you're not constantly anxious all the time. And I think a lot of highly sensitive people are anxious a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And our
Yes.
bodies, we feel things so strongly. And even food that we put in our body can make us feel a certain way, both like just from being highly sensitive, but also physically, right? If we don't have the right neurotransmitters, if we're not making enough GABA, we're not able to calm ourselves. So for me, it was really mind blowing
Yes.
to just figure that out. And then once I did, I said, that's what I'm going to focus on in my business, because that is so, so, so important. It's almost more important than diet, because if you're just focusing on one, right, diet and supplements, you're not going to get the changes that you want. You have to also be focusing on that like mental and emotional component as well.
Yes, definitely holistic approach.
Mhm.
So I think it would be great if you could tell the listeners more about some of the symptoms, right? You mentioned some of that, having to be in the bathroom a lot. That's one symptom. So how would a person know, maybe I need to look at my gut health? What are some symptoms that they could look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, constipation is a big one. A lot of my clients are constipated.
Hmm.
That's a big sign that perhaps your serotonin levels are low, and your GABA levels are low, because those actually are what helps kind of move the food through your system. So that's definitely one thing. Diarrhea, constant diarrhea, that's a big one. Bloating and gas. There
Mm.
are certain foods that do give us bloating and gas, like, beans and legumes are one of them. And you can kind of, if soak and sprout them before you eat them, it can be less. But if
Hmm.
you're constantly bloated and you have gas that's super foul smelling, that's probably a sign that something is going on.
Hmm.
Acid reflux, that's not normal. Any kind of cramping before
Hmm.
you go to the bathroom, that's definitely a big sign. I think, you know, when it comes to eating sugar, if you find yourself like becoming more anxious after you eat sugar, that's actually a big sign too that you might not be making enough neurotransmitters, or your gut bacteria is out of balance, where you have more bad bacteria to good bacteria in your gut. Yeah, those are like the big ones.
Right. Those are, thank you for sharing those symptoms because I'm sure some people are experiencing that. With reflux, usually you're given some kind of proton pump inhibitor or something to stop the digestive juices, excuse me. And actually, you probably don't need to do that. That actually will make things worse, right? In the
Yes.
long run. So, yeah, I remember learning in one of my courses that it actually means that your digestive acids are not working properly and almost may need to add more. Even though it sounds maybe it's like it's counterintuitive, but the reflux is because things are not being digested well.
Yeah, well, actually, the reflux has to do with your esophageal sphincter. So when you swallow your food, it goes through your esophagus first. And then there's like an
Yes.
opening that goes from the esophagus into the stomach. That opening sometimes can get faulty and it might
Okay.
close all the way. But also, if you're unable to digest, like if you don't, usually it's because you don't have enough stomach acid. You're not able to break down the foods, right? And if you eat too much,
Mhm.
then it can come back up into your esophagus. So yes, you're totally right on about like not having enough of the
Yeah.
digestive enzyme to break it down.
And you said it so much better than I did, so I'm glad I asked you that question. So that was much better explained. Thank you. That's why you're the expert on this. So, yes. Okay, so now we know some of the symptoms that a person might look at and say, hey, let me look deep into this and let me look further into this. And now you have programs, you work with people. Tell me more about that. That journey to you started your practice working with an integrative doctor did help you, and then you obviously grew and you have multiple certifications now, right? One of them being the AIP, which is the autoimmune.
Yes.
What is that? Yes. Okay. So the autoimmune nutritional. So you have a few. So first, let's talk about more about the journey, right? So you're at the doctor and you start working with people. Tell us a little bit more about your training and how you work with people and that process that you've been through.
Yeah.
And going through.
Totally. So I think, my training was with Bowman College, and it's very science based, evidence based, and that's something that I really enjoy because I can present to my clients, okay, here are all the reasons why, here's the research, it's backed up by science. And so I think, so that was always really helpful for me in being able to work with clients and come up with plans for them. A lot of times, I think a lot of entrepreneurs focus on things that they've had hardships with that they want to help other people with. And so for me, that definitely comes over with the grief. It comes over with the gut health and the mind body connection. And so, in kind of, as you start, you do one thing, right? And so I kind of did sort of what this integrative doctor did. But as I've grown now over the last few years, it's really become my own practice. And I have, very specific things that I do with my clients. And really, after we kind of go over all of the root cause nutrition stuff, then we really start to drill down and focus on, okay, what are some of the emotional components that you have, that you've been dealing with that might be affecting how you're digesting your food or how your hormones are imbalanced, or your autoimmune disease, because we know that stress is one of the determining factors of autoimmune disease. And that's a big thing, I mean, with my mom, for instance, she had so much stress throughout her whole life, but it was really after my dad died and we had some other family stuff happen. And I just saw her, I mean, it was classic Hashimoto's, she just started gaining weight. She couldn't take it off. She wasn't eating any differently. She was tired all the time, heavy brain fog, fatigue, headaches. And when she finally went in and was diagnosed, it was super eye-opening because it was well, now, yes, you have to change your diet and movement practices, but you also have to change your lifestyle. And it really, for her, she didn't actually start de-stressing until I started telling her about it. So, but then you start to see even more changes after that. And so, in my practice, all of that stuff happens at the same time.
Yes. So you've taken all these pieces, all your personal life experience with your mother and your training, and you've created this beautiful practice to support others. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So, the practice, so I have a group program right now. It's 6 weeks long. It's called the Ultimate Mind Body Reset. We're in it currently right now, and the next one will start at the beginning of April. And then I also I work with clients one-on-one. So usually in a 3-month container or a 6-month container. And, they go through the same process. We do an intake session where we go over their whole health history over the course of 90 minutes. And then I come together and I put a plan together for them that focuses on foods to add in, if there's, some other root cause issues going on, that might be foods to remove for a period of time, some supportive supplements and herbs, because oftentimes when we have compromised digestion or hormonal imbalances, we need a little extra support in the beginning while we're learning to eat again. And I say that in that eating nutrient dense foods are not something that everyone goes toward immediately. So having to relearn what to put in your body, sometimes having those supplements and herbs can be really helpful. And then really work. And then a lot of those lifestyle changes, even sleep, movement, we forget about sleep. Yes, I think we know that sleep is good for us, but all the benefits of sleep that we get, that's when we detox. That's when we replenish. It's when we restore everything. So, it's so important to be able to get enough sleep, because that is what helps balance hormones and helps, your digestion work properly. So, talking about that, talking about stress management techniques, really focusing on learning about the vagus nerve and the connection between the mind and the gut. And then after that, in all the sessions after that, then we go deeper into the emotional work, the unprocessed grief, the, mindset, and just kind of tweaking here and there the nutrition stuff.
And so what have you seen with your clients? What kind of, if maybe pick someone, obviously anonymously, to say like, how did she come or he come, or they come to the practice and then to work with you, and then what was the result?
Yeah, so I had a client, one of my first ones actually, and he was suffering from, he had thyroid cancer, and he had like 3 surgeries already at that point, and his goal actually was to just like learn to eat more healthfully for his body. And he noticed he had a lot of anxiety, and he wanted to just kind of fix or like help heal the anxiety with food. So we did a whole plan, foods to add in, foods to remove, supplements, lifestyle, did a lot of work on his processing his grief from the cancer, because he had been, dealing with it for, at that point, 10 years. And then we worked together for about 8 months. And then 3 months later, he called me. He's like, I have something really big to tell you, and I need to tell you over the phone. And so I said, okay. He calls me and he said, Stephanie, I went to get my checkup from the doctor, from the endocrinologist, and she told me that my cancer shrank. And
Wow.
and both of us were like, what? How did that happen? Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. And she said, he said that the doctor said, just keep doing whatever you're doing because it's working. And that was huge. That was huge.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that story and all that you've shared so far. So I have 2 more questions for you. Okay, so first, if you could share one resource, I end my interviews with a resource reveal. What is one resource you'd like to share with the listeners to help support them?
Yeah, so I think, one of my favorite readings is The Mind-Gut Connection by Emeron Mayer. And that, if you want to deep dive into the mind-gut connection, that is it. So I definitely recommend that one. And then I'm going to throw in one more. Autoimmunewellness.com is your best resource for anything autoimmune related. And that is huge. So if you have an autoimmune disease and you don't know about it yet, absolutely check it out.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those resources. And I'll have links in the show notes for both of those. So now the last question is about you. So we've got to hear about some of your amazing work and how you work with people. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, my website is gutofintegrity.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Gut of Integrity. I try to keep everything at Gut of Integrity. I have a Twitter, but I'm not on it that much. So Instagram is best. And Instagram and Facebook are best. And then you can also send me an email, Stephanie at gutofintegrity.com. I'm also kind of around in different various areas. You might see me, in some of the AIP realms and other, mind-body realms. So
awesome. Okay, good. So that's if they want to follow you and if they want to email you and if they're interested in finding out more about the 6-week program. We'll have information in the show notes. And how would they find out about that if they wanted to find out?
Yeah, so you can always go to my website and sign up for, to get onto my email list, and you'd be one of the first ones contacted. Or you can send me an email and I can add you to the list when it opens up. But there's a whole, and maybe you can add this to the links in the show notes. I can send directly to the page for the group program.
Yes, I will definitely have that there available for the listeners. And thank you so much. And before we end for today, is there anything else that you want to share?
I think if you feel like something is going wrong in your body and you know something is off, don't ignore it, because more than likely there is something going on, and you can always, always, always find someone that will help you, even if it takes a long time, even if you get frustrated, like there is somebody there. Don't give up.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your journey and all the knowledge. And for anyone that's looking to find out more and connect with Stephanie, I'll have all the links that we talked about in the show notes available. And in the meantime, all of you take good care. And thank you again, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Enlightened Heart podcast, where we focus on issues that are relevant to support highly sensitive people and empaths to thrive in this world instead of just surviving. I created this podcast to support people like you and me. So if you are called, please take a moment to write a review, because you are truly appreciated as a listener, and I would love to be able to share this knowledge with others. Your review is like an invitation for others to join you. Until next time, take good care. Bye.